This is going to be a video on how to replace the components that are underneath this cover. To start, you want to remove the cover that's on this side of the machine, the one that swings in front of everything, and then also cut the threads along this path up here. We're now going to move to the side right now, and I'm going to show you some of the parts over here that we have to take off in order to make this a lot easier. Let me just adjust this camera a little bit so it makes it easier for you to see everything. So we're going to remove this cover right here with these two screws. Be careful, this cover likes to fall. Next we're going to, let me make sure I can see everything. Oh, now you can see me. We're going to remove this cover by just pushing down up here and pulling to the back of the machine. And then we're going to remove this screw that's right there. Set that off to the side. And then we're going to unplug this. Now take note of where this is plugged in at. It should only plug into one part, but if yours has two plugs, just make sure you know which one it goes into. And we can tuck this off to the side. The last thing that we need to do here in the back is cut this zip tie that's right there. And you will have to replace this when it's done, so make sure that you have some zip ties for this repair. And unplug that wire by just clipping in right there. Then we can pull it out. And now we're going to move back to the front and continue with the parts that need to come off there. So the first parts that need to come off is this piece right here. And this part right here. So I like to first loosen the screws and then take them all the way out. Now you know that the screws that you're taking off for this piece that goes right here are longer than any of the other flat Phillips head screws. And make sure that you put those ones back in whenever you're reassembling everything. But I'll cover that when I'm reassembling it with you. And then we're going to remove these screws. And sometimes it likes to fall, sometimes it doesn't. Then we're also going to remove this piece. Now yours may have a little tiny screw down here, and just remove that screw. So now we're going to remove this assembly up here. And it has 4 screws right here, and those are the 3mm screws. We'll completely remove those screws. Some of the screws like to stay in, that's fine. So now we're going to take this and we're actually just going to flip it up. See where my thumb is? That's where you want to put your thumb. You don't want to put it down here. And we're just going to flip it up and very carefully put it on top of the tree. Now if you can't reach that, make sure to lower this and then you can do it. And that now exposes everything that we need to get to this area. Let's actually lower this camera. So we're going to do this on needle number 1, which is right here. But this is the same for any of the other ones. If you're doing needles 8, 1 through 8, any of those that you're replacing any of these parts on, whether it be this piece, any of the parts that are in this area, you want to try and be on 15. It makes it a little bit easier. Or if you're doing anything from 9 to 15, you want to try and be on needle number 1. So the first thing that I like to do is I actually like to remove the needle from the machine. So I'm going to do that now. Just a little bit of a turn. we'll set that needle off to the side. And now what you want to do is you want to take your hand and cup it underneath here, and then completely remove that screw that holds the needle in place. Because if you've ever done this without us, you'll know that pretty much everything here likes to fall apart like that. And there'll be 3 parts that fall off the machine. You'll have a rubber washer, this metal piece, and the screw. So we're going to set those off to the side. Next, we're going to loosen this screw and this screw that's right here. You may have to push pretty hard on it and get it to undo. And you don't want to remove them, you just want to loosen them up a couple times so that it's free. And then we want to remove this screw that's right here that holds the presser foot in place. And then if you have this piece loose enough, the presser foot will just come right out. If not, you may have to loosen that up a little bit more. So now we need to get all of these components free. To do that, we need to remove or loosen the 3mm screw that's there and the 3mm screw that's right there below it. So the top one's called the upper dead stop, and this one's called the needle bar dog. And then we're going to grab it from the top, and then we're just going to pull it up. And as you do that, the needle bar is going to come out. Now if we're only replacing this part, that's as far as we need to go. We can take the new part, slide it in. If we need to replace the spring or those pieces for any reason, then we take those out. Now if you happen to take out the needle bar all the way like that, remember that the small spring or the thin spring goes on top, and then there's a little washer that's inside of here that you need to make sure that the bottom of this goes into. Most of the time it doesn't move, so you don't have to worry about it. So we're going to line those back up. And even if you needed to replace this rod, this is pretty much the same process. So the next piece to go on, it goes on after we get it through this body, is the upper dead stop piece. That's the one that looks like this. And it goes on like this on the machine. If you look at the other ones, they'll usually give you a pretty good example of what it should look like and the order that it goes in. So I'm going to hold that in place like this so you can see. And the next piece is the one with the big, it's called I call it a dog. I don't know what the actual term is, but it's this is the needle bar dog, and it goes on like that, just like the same orientation as the other ones that are there. And then it goes the thicker spring. Now if you look at this spring, it's kind of hard to tell on camera, but on this end right here, it's a lot smaller than the other end that's in my hand. It's kind of hard to see. So this is the big end, and this is the small end. That small end goes up, and we're going to feed this bar down a little bit more. And now we take the needle bar bracket, or the presser foot bracket, with the barrel part up and the little part that sticks out the back going towards the back. Slide that up on. And now what you can do is you can hold it from the back while you hold everything up. And now we're going to push the rod all the way down. It'll probably be a little bit hard to see on camera. I'm going to try and get it on there. But what we want is, if you can see how I have the holes right here, we have 2. We want the 2 facing the right, out towards the right, not all the way to the right. We want it kind of like at a 45 degree to the right. And now we're going to take our presser foot, we're going to slide that up on there. And another thing to note is this white piece goes around the bar. We're going to stick it up through its slot. Slide it over the bar, take the screw that holds it in place, don't actually tighten this one down all the way. We'll do that in a separate video that goes over how to set the depth of the presser foot. And now we want to install the other parts that go here. So there's the rubber washer, which if you can see on the camera, see how there's that little part that goes in, and then on the opposite side it's smooth or flat. That flat side goes down and that indent side goes up. So we'll put it on there like that. And then we'll take this piece with the little wire thing pointing it down, or if you look at the bottom of it, if this wire thing is broken off, there's a little hole on one side. It's not on this side, it would be on this side if this wasn't here. So that wire piece goes down. We slide that up, and we want to line up the hole of this with that bottom hole on the needle bar. And very carefully take the screw for it and put it in with the, see how it has a funny end to it? That end goes into the hole. We don't need to tighten it down all the way, we just need to get it started. And we're going to get the needle, which is right here. Insert that in, and its orientation isn't really important at this point. You want to set that after you do the needle bar depth. So we'll just get it in there so that you can do the needle bar depth, and then once you do the needle bar depth, you'll have to make sure the needle's in the right position. Now that we have that, if you need to do any of the other ones, you would go ahead and do any of the other ones. So we're going to put this piece back on all the way. And if you want to, you can try to match these up, but you don't have to. But it does make it a little bit easier. So what I'm doing, just so that you can kind of see, is I'm making sure that the top piece of this is even with the other ones. And I'm taking my 3mm Allen wrench, and I'm taking this bottom piece, the one with the big part sticking out the back, and I'm lining it up so it's roughly even with the other ones. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to go back through and do the needle bar height in another video on how to actually properly set it. This is just so that it makes it easier when you go and do that video. And then we're going to take this top one, and then we're going to push it up. Now another thing that you're going to want to note is pay attention to how your screw is down here at the bottom, where your needle bar screw is. You want to kind of match the angle of the other one. So in this case, mine is not the right way. So I'm going to loosen those two screws that I just tightened up. And I'm going to kind of match it so that it looks like the other ones. It's kind of off at an angle like that. It's not straightforward, it's off at an angle. And then I'm going to try and do the same thing where I match the height of that part. It's kind of difficult, but it makes it just a little bit easier when you go back through and do the repair. Tell you what, we'll do it that way. And like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect, because you're going to have to go back through and do the needle bar height to make it right, and also the presser foot height. So what we can do now is we can actually start putting everything back on if you're done with replacing all of these parts. We're going to start putting the head assembly parts back on. So we're going to take the thread guide thing. Very carefully, we're going to bring it down. Now, I'm going to see if I can get this on camera. Because if you don't do this next step the right way, you'll get a lot of false thread breaks whenever you're doing it. But if you look right here, there's this metal piece sticking off the machine, and it sticks right out into the center of the head in this case. It may be over here, it may be over here. but it sticks out and it looks like that. What you want to do is this sensor right here, see how it slides? There's a little slot that it needs to go into. That slot goes on that little metal piece that comes out. So once we get it there, I'm going to just vaguely tighten these down so I can get the other screws in. So we can get these screws in now. You want these fairly snug. You don't want them super tight as you might break the plastic. Now we're going to go around to the back. I'm going to see if I can show you what I was talking about with that sensor. See how it looks right there? See how the black thing is going in between the little slot on the white sensor? That's what we want that to look like. If it doesn't look like that, you'll get false thread breaks whenever you start up the machine, and then you'll just get in contact with us, and then we'll go over the steps on how to repair that. Or I guess get it lined back up. So now we are going to take the sensor wire, tuck it under this little post that's here, and then it's easier to plug it in right now while it's there. And then we take our little tiny zip tie that we have to keep this up. You don't need it super tight, but you want it tight enough so that it doesn't fall on any of these components or touches any of these components down there. And then we're going to trim the top of this off. Then we're going to take this panel and put it back on. Ensure that we plug this back into its proper spot and screw it back in. Oh, I dropped mine in there. You do not want to do that. If you ever drop the screw in here, make sure you go get it. See if I can see it real quick. There it is. If you ever drop a screw or something into the machine, you'll always want to go make sure you get it before you go any further. If it drops further into the machine, definitely come and let us know. Because you don't want a screw inside your machine when you try to run it, because it can cause problems. I got lucky on that one. So we'll tighten that in. Take this, tuck it into place, and go back to needle 8, or go back this way. We're going to take and put this cover back on. Now see this slot that's right there? We want to make sure that that slot is going over this wire right here. And then sometimes this slot right there has to line up with something. Just make sure that you're not pinching any of the wires. And that's it for this side. And now what you can do, now it's a good time to go ahead and do your needle bar height and your upper dead stop and set your presser foot height. I'm not going to do that on mine just because this machine has to be set up, so there's no point in me doing it. But we do have dedicated videos on that. If you don't get them, let us know. If you don't do those on your machine, It probably won't catch the needle and it won't sew very well, if it sews at all. Just as a warning. So if you don't get those videos with this video, let us know. You want to stop right now and go and do those. And we want to put this piece back on using the shorter screws. And I don't like to tighten down the screws all the way until I get all of them in. Tighten this one down just a little bit. There we go. Then we want to make sure that this gets installed. You haven't seen a lot of what I've been doing, but that's okay. This gets installed with the longer Phillips head screws. You'll probably find if you use the smaller ones, but don't be surprised if it falls off the machine if you're not using the longer ones. Let me tighten down all these screws. Put this cover back on. And if you did all your other settings, you're good to go and good to set up the machine. If you have any questions about the procedure that we just did or any of the other videos that go along with this, don't hesitate to ask. And if you have any problems with what we just did, don't actually do the repair. And just get in touch with us and we can go from there. But yeah, let us know how it goes.